for Republicans to do that by saying he himself and publicly saying in ways that have been communicated to the media that he is open one way or the other. He is not ruling out a potential conviction. We're not just talking about people like, Senator Mitt Romney, right? Senator Susan Collins, people who have been considered in kind of that never Trump camp or Trump skeptical camp that have often come out and expressed their concern or disappointment with the president. We're talking about the potential for many more Republicans, perhaps 10, 15 Republicans to come out if, in fact, Mitch McConnell is the one who is able to open the door for that once this trial begins. And the state of the Republican Party, that's the short-term piece of it, right? But you look at the medium and the longer-term piece. There is a reckoning that is already happening about how this party either comes together or doesn't in the post-Trump era, which is beginning in just about 4 hours from now. Because you have to remember, while President Trump has dismayed, disappointed, infuriated some conservatives here in Washington and many Republicans around the country, particularly with the way he incited that insurrection at the Capitol just here a couple of weeks ago, he still does have a hardcore base of loyal supporters. And there will be, and there are right now, some Republicans who are hoping to tap into that. You look at the actions of, for example, Senator Josh Hawley over the last couple of weeks, the things that he has done, the things he has previewed that he will do as it relates to this impeachment trial, somebody who seems to be looking to take the mantle of the Trump presidency, Savannah, as we see the president walk out.
Let's watch these pictures. The president and First Lady in their final steps outside the White House, Blair House. And Blair House is where the president-elect Joe Biden spent the evening and is right now. And that is as close as the outgoing president and the incoming president will come today. This picture you see right there. The outgoing President Trump, the board Marine One, it's taking off, about to lift up over the White House, will pass over Blair House, where the incoming president waits to take the oath of office after noon today.
Yes, and Savannah, for clarity, early today we heard from members of Joe Biden's team that there has been no direct contact between President Trump and President-elect Biden. Of course, none, as you note, will happen face-to-face, and there has been no call of any kind, in spite, as we were told, allies and advisors of the president urging him to do just that.
How long is this ride, Savannah?
It's just a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. Yeah, it's the Joint Base Andrews is just a few minutes outside of Washington, and that's the quickest way to get there. Yeah. Marine One, and it also affords that ride affords an incredible and beautiful view of the nation's capital and all of its monuments. The United States Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson, the White House, the Washington Monument. He is flying over a city in lockdown whose mall is closed. Spectators, other than a handful, not allowed because of the security concerns and the attempted insurrection of 2 weeks ago. So you can imagine that's a beautiful shot, and what a view that really only a president gets.
And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, what are Trump's final words going to be there? And Kelly, we were talking about some of the people who will not be in attendance, Vice President Pence, Mitch McConnell, and the rest. Have you seen some who are in attendance who we may know the names of?
Well, there's certainly a few of the staffers who have been a part of our White House experience, not necessarily well known to the public. One of them that may be known to the audience, Hogan Gidley, who has served as a spokesperson for President Trump both at the White House and the campaign. They have filled in behind us here at Joint Base Andrews, and the invitation was extended to people in the orbit of the president, and it allowed a +5. So you have some children, some family members, and for people who have been allies of the president, this is an important way to say goodbye. Now, the ride from Marine One is about 10 minutes, and notably today, as you can see, there's a decoy. There's always 3 of these Marine choppers. Only one is known as Marine One. That's, of course, for security. That's about a 10-minute flight to get here to Joint Base Andrews. And I would not be at all surprised if President Trump asked for the touring version, where he could see some of the monuments and sites that occasionally that's done by presidents. And notably today, he would be able to see the National Mall that has been filled in with flags for the Biden-Harris inauguration, a stunning display and something that will clearly make President Trump aware that his time in Washington is ending, and this is a day of celebration for his successor. But here at Joint Base Andrews, we do expect some thank yous, Now, the fact that the vice president is not attending today, and it is fair to say he is going to the inaugural and he has time commitments there, but he still possesses the ability to take a motorcade and to travel quickly. So it certainly seems to be about more than logistics that Vice President Pence will not be here today. He will be the representative of this administration to the next administration and will participate in those ceremonial important markers today. So there'll be that small bit of the peaceful connection. Other than that, we expect this to be a very Trump-centric experience, with the president talking about his time in office, feeling the support of those who gathered here, and saying goodbye. Savannah, Hoda?
All right, Kelly, we continue to watch Marine One, and there's a little bit of a disconnect there. You see the majesty of that image, and then we hear the music that's playing at the rally, little Billie Jean, which is makes for a stark picture and a stark combination. Let's bring Andrea Mitchell into this conversation. Andrea, get your perspective. You certainly have covered a lot of inaugurations. We're going to be seeing a different one for a variety of reasons. We've obviously mentioned that the president has chosen not to attend, but we're also in the midst of a pandemic, so where we would have seen tens of thousands perhaps on the mall. There's only about 1,000 tickets that were handed out because of social distancing and because of health requirements.
No, absolutely. And it occurs to me that that is the closest flying over it that this outgoing president is going to get, not only to those flags, which of course represent the people that cannot be there on the mall, and he came into the White House exaggerating the numbers of people that had been there for his inauguration, the crowd most notably, but also the closest he'll come to those extraordinary lights that were there along the reflecting pond for the first memorial that this nation has had yesterday evening at sunset, which was so remarkable for all of the 400,000 people, more than 400,000 people who have died. I'm thinking also of COVID and the deep cleaning that has been going on in the White House, and now the extraordinary activity inside that White House. Now, usually there is very little time because the incoming president and the president-elect and new First Lady are coming in to the White House for that ceremonial coffee. There are other people there being greeted. There's an exchange of gifts. We've seen that every time in modern history, but this time that's not happening. So there's a little bit more time for the White House staff, the extraordinary staff reporting to the chief usher, and the chief usher is for now staying. And interestingly, he was recruited from the Trump Hotel here in Washington. So he was a Trump employee, the first time that a political appointee was brought into the usher's office, and he's been there for the last 4 years, and he is staying temporarily, at least. We don't know for how long. That's a decision for the incoming first family. But right now, it is a madhouse of taking down pictures, putting up new pictures, cleaning because of COVID, most notably, but also moving in the Biden furniture, which has some of it, at least from Wilmington, has been in storage. The moving vans went out from Wilmington, and they've been in storage in a storage facility in nearby Maryland, right across the D.C. border, and all of that being brought in, and they do a remarkable job. What we don't know yet is whether in the Oval Office desk, the Resolute desk, whether there is a note from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And that has been traditional. We've seen those notes. We've seen through the eyes of Pete Souza, most notably leaving the Obama White House, all of the extraordinary pictures of those encounters. And that is not happening today, but it'll all be completely recreated by the time the Bidens come in.
Pete Souza, of course, is the former White House photographer under the Obama administration. But yeah, it's astonishing to think about it. Here's this White House. It is, after all, the people's house. It doesn't belong to anybody. Anyone there is a temporary occupant. But just the logistics, as Andrea points out, I mean, the White House staff, they don't change with the administration. Generally, they work through multiple administrations, and some of them have been there decades. Can you imagine? But today, just think about it for a moment. There you're looking at the White House. Last night, Donald Trump spent the night there. Tonight, Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden will spend the night there. And in between is this extraordinary moment in American democracy where there is a peaceful transfer of power. And, it's easy to take it for granted, but perhaps not this year.
Yeah, I think that's good to underscore, because I think everyone keeps talking about all the things that are not right about this moment, but we do, in fact, have that peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah, and we mentioned that the president had made very brief remarks before he departed and got on the helicopter. We've got them now. We can play them back for you. So we want to roll that tape. Just a few.
Mr. President,
So the president said his goodbye, but he hopes it's not a long-term goodbye. So I think we've got a little preview of what we might hear in a few moments. He does have longer remarks prepared for his ceremony. And now we're seeing Marine One as it closes in on Joint Base Andrews. And that's where the president's farewell ceremony will take place in just a few moments. He's got his family members there and a handful of folks. We don't have a head count yet, but as we understand, they sent a lot of invitations for people who wanted to come and bid farewell to the president. Here he is arriving.
Yeah, I think Kristen Welker is with us just for a second. Kristen, what did you make of those remarks? He said it was a goodbye, but not a long-term goodbye.
Well, and I anticipate we will hear him echo that when he does make remarks, and it's a sign that he is not ruling out another run for the presidency. And I want to pick up on one of the key issues that you have been talking about, this remarkable split screen, the fact that President Trump is not going to be attending Joe Biden's inauguration, and how President-elect Biden attempts to bridge that gap. He has said time and time again, his first and biggest challenge is going to be to try to unify this country. So I am told that in his inaugural address, he is going to call for unity and he's going to call for healing this country. But how does he actually put that to work? Well, his advisors say he's going to try to reach across the aisle. He is going to start with a bipartisan trip to church. He personally invited top Republicans to attend that church service with him. He's hoping that that will start by setting the tone with a show of solidarity, but then he's going to get down to work with a series of 15 executive orders after he is sworn into office. And it gets more complicated when he tries to pass big pieces of legislation, like a stimulus package, for example. But his goal is going to be to try to reach across the aisle. He is facing crises not seen in generations, and of course, COVID at the top of that list. So as we watch this really remarkable split screen, President-elect Biden set to leave Blair House, President Trump arriving at Joint Base Andrews. It underscores everything that is at stake. Savannah and Hoda.
And we will watch Marine One taxi there to its position. The president and first lady will depart. If you're wondering where is Barron Trump, the youngest Trump child, we understand is already on Air Force One and in position and ready for the flight back to Florida. And the president expected to address the crowd, which includes his adult children, his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and several top advisors present this morning.
Let's go back to Kelly O'Donnell, who's there. Kelly, it's hard for us to tell from our perspective, but how many people are there awaiting the president?
I would think there are several hundred people, and there was sort of a wave of them running to get into position. Many wanted to get up close at the front of the line to see the president as close as possible. So several hundred are here. Now, President Trump loves to measure his popularity based in crowds. Today is not the day for that. You had to go through some extra steps to get access to this military base. And certainly, in the next few minutes, we'll hear the sound of the Marine One chopper lowering. I've been competing all morning with this Trump rally soundtrack, which clearly did not take into account sort of the solemnity of the day. These are the raucous rock and roll tunes that have been a part of rally life for Donald Trump. I think we'll have more patriotic music when the military band plays. But as you can see, his adult children are here. Some friends are here. Notably, it is not the kind of send-off with lots of elected officials and so forth. This may be more about donors and friends.
This sets the tone, the president. It does. His state of mind. And I think we got a hint of that, too, with his final words from the White House South Lawn, where he said it's a goodbye, but maybe not a long-term goodbye. Many have wondered if this final day in his presidency might be the first day of a new campaign. Do you expect to hear words like that from the president today?
An allusion to that, Savannah, certainly, and it's not insignificant as we watch the president now depart Marine One for the last time as president of the United States with First Lady Melania Trump behind him. It is not insignificant that he has now alluded to the idea that it's not a long-term goodbye to the White House. The campaign rally music is no surprise. It is no secret. It is a signal that this is still a president who is intent on campaigning. He will continue, by all accounts, to hold rallies. He he will continue to work his base, if you will, and look at what his political future holds. There are those around the president, Savannah, who question whether he will actually run or whether he will perhaps just talk about running. But let's listen in here in case the president does make some remarks before stepping up to the mics.
Well, and the other big question, of course, Hallie, is what happens in this impeachment trial. If he were to be convicted, would there be then a next vote requiring only a majority of the Senate to ban him from holding office in the future? There's the 21-gun salute. Let's listen.
Thank you very much. And we love you, and I can tell you that from the bottom of my heart. This has been an incredible 4 years. We've accomplished so much together. I want to thank all of my family and my friends and my staff and so many other people for being here. I want to thank you for your effort, your hard work. People have no idea how hard this family worked. They worked, and they worked for you. They could have had a much easier life, but they did a fantastic job. I just want to thank all of you, everyone. I want to thank Mark Meadows, who's here, someplace right there. I want to thank Mark. But it's been something very special. We've accomplished a lot. Our First Lady has been a woman of great grace and beauty and dignity. And so popular with the people, so popular with the people. In fact, honey, would you like to say a few words, please?
Being your First Lady was my greatest honor. Thank you for your love and your support. You will be in my thoughts and prayers. God bless you all. God bless your families. And God bless this beautiful nation. Thank you.
What else has to be said, right? But what we've done, that's true, honey, great job. What we've done has been amazing by any standard. We rebuilt the United States military. We created a new force called Space Force. That in itself would be a major achievement for a regular administration. We were not a regular administration. We took care of the vets, 91% approval rating. They've never had that before. The vets have given us, the VA, the vets have given us an approval rating like has never been before. We took care of our vets and our beautiful vets. They were very badly treated before we came along. And as you know, we get them great service, and we pick up the bill, and they can go out and they can see a doctor if they have to wait long periods of time. We got it so that we can sadly get rid of people that don't treat our vets properly. We didn't have any of those rights before when I came on, so our vets are happy, our people are happy, our military is thrilled. We also got tax cuts, the largest tax cut and reform in the history of our country by far. I hope they don't raise your taxes. But if they do, I told you so. And if you look at the regulations, which I consider the regulation cuts to be maybe even more important, that's why we have such good and have had such good job numbers. The job numbers have been absolutely incredible. When we started, had we not been hit by the pandemic, we would have had numbers that would never have been seen. Already our numbers are the best ever. If you look at what happened until February a year ago, our numbers were at a level that nobody had ever seen before. And even now, we really built it twice. We got hit. Nobody blames us for that. The whole world got hit, and then we built it again. And now the stock market is actually substantially higher than it was at its higher point prior to the pandemic. So it's really, you could say we built it twice. And you're going to see You're going to see incredible numbers start coming in if everything is sort of left alone. Be careful. Very complex. Be careful. But you're going to see some incredible things happening. And remember us when you see these things happening, if you would. Remember us, because I'm looking at elements of our economy that are set to be a rocket ship up. It's a rocket ship up. We have the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest economy in the world. And as bad as the pandemic was, we were hit so hard, just like the entire world was hit so hard. Places that thought they got away with it didn't get away with it. They're suffering right now. We did something that is really considered a medical miracle. They're calling it a miracle, and that was the vaccine. We got the vaccine developed in 9 months instead of 9 years or 5 years or 10 years or a long time. It was supposed to take a long time, many, many years to develop a vaccine. We have 2 out. We have another one coming almost immediately, and it really is a great achievement. So you should start to see really good numbers over the next few months. I think you're going to see those numbers really skyrocket downward. And I can only say this, we have worked hard. We've left it all, as the athletes would say, we've left it all in the field. We don't have to come and say, we'll never say in a month when we're sitting in Florida, we're not going to be looking at each other and saying, you know, if we only worked a little bit harder, you can't work harder. And we had a lot of obstacles, and we went through the obstacles, and we just got 75 million votes, and that's a record in the history of sitting presidents. That's an all-time record by a lot, by many millions. In the history of sitting presidents, it's been really just an honor. One of the things we're very, very proud of is the selection of almost 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. That's a very big number. That's a record-setting number. And so we've done a lot, and there's still things to do. The first thing we have to do is pay our respects and our love to the incredible people and families who suffered so gravely from the China virus. It's a horrible thing that was put onto the world. We all know where it came from, but it's a horrible, horrible thing. So be very careful. Be very, very careful. But we want to pay great love to all of the people that have suffered, including families who have suffered so gravely. So with that, I just want to say you are amazing people. This is a great, great country. It is my greatest honor and privilege to have been your president. I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better. I wish the new administration great luck and great success. I think they'll have great success. They have the foundation to do something really spectacular. And again, we put it in a position like it's never been before, despite the worst plague to hit since, I guess you'd say 1917, over 100 years ago. And despite that, the things that we've done have been just incredible, and I couldn't have done it without you. So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form. And again, I want to just leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress. And I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
President Trump and his final remarks to the nation, to some supporters who were gathered at Joint Base Andrews, saying, have a nice life, and he will be back in some form. He did wish success to the new administration. That is the first time we've heard words like that. He went through the accomplishments of his administration. He did thank Vice President Mike Pence. Hoda, we were given remarks that the president was supposed to read a speech. One of his staffers actually sent these to me, but none of them really got read today. As we turn to Chuck, Chuck, President Trump throwing out the script just like he came in. He's leaving in the exact same way.
You know, though, for him, that was, I don't know what I would call it. Subdued, I guess, is probably not quite the right word, and I wouldn't use melancholy, but there was sort of an odd acceptance to the moment that we heard from him in a way that we hadn't for the last 2 months. But I'm just sorry. I'm YMCA? I mean, really? I'm sorry. I'm just sort of struck by as Kelly, I thought, really put it well. The music doesn't match the solemnity of the moment. It's probably the understatement that has been said on our air. But I will say this, I think the most fascinating theme of his remarks was he essentially wants to say, I have a feeling the economy is going to get better. I have a feeling vaccines are coming, and I want the credit. And so we probably did get a preview of when we hear from the soon-to-be former president in the next 6 months, if there are good things that are happening under President Biden's watch, he is going to want to take a lot of credit, and obviously anything bad, I'm sure he will try to say that he had nothing to do with that. But in that sense, it was almost sort of a normal way for a president to leave, trying to say, hey, I've handed you something that you should be able to build on. So I go through this entire morning and wonder, imagine had President Trump acted with some humility for the last 2 months, what all of these moments might have looked like today.
Yeah, you talk about the music, Chuck, and that's something that we've been talking about. But it is true, he did say he'd be back. And you did mention that these are songs that he plays at his campaign rallies. Yeah. So, this may be just his way of getting started again. He also said he'd be watching and listening. Yes. That we can be sure of. But Hallie, he'll be watching and listening without his megaphone that propelled him to office, at least in his own estimation. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, social media. So a lot of people have wondered whether the president would get into the media business, whether he has plans to have his message heard in some new form.
And that's been some of the speculation. Does a president who has used the force of specifically conservative media to amplify his message create his own kind of platform? That's also, Savannah, really expensive. That's a big financial ask. And so there are some questions, I think, from folks that I've talked to in our reporting on whether that could actually happen. But it is something in the air as President Trump claps along to the sounds of the YMCA there and gets ready to make his last wave before boarding what is still Air Force One now for the last time as president. He'll step off, of course, in Palm Beach down at his Mar-a-Lago estate. You referenced, both you and Hoda, how the president previewed he's going to be back or he hopes to be back. But I'm struck when we look at that shot of the president's family members. There are multiple people there with the last name Trump who may end up on the political stage ahead of 2024. There has been speculation about, for example, the political futures and ambitions of Ivanka Trump, a senior advisor in the White House, of Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, who has been a surrogate over the last couple of years for his father and who has built his own following in the conservative base. Laura Trump as well, Eric Trump's wife, and the Trump. Go ahead, Savannah. I'm sorry.
Hallie, let me just jump in on you. Sorry, because I want to make note of the split screen now, and it's a split screen both on your television, but also in history. Because now, as we wait for the Air Force One steps to rise up, we are now now watching and just saw a few moments ago emerging from Blair House, Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris departing to begin their day of ceremony. So President Trump leaving the stage and wasting no time. Within a matter of seconds, we now will begin to see the new president, and there it is moments ago. Now you can see the shot, Dr. Jill Biden, the incoming First Lady, and President-elect Joe Biden as they depart Blair House, which of course is right across the street from the White House.
Yeah, they're going to a church service, and they have invited members of both parties to go along with them. They've invited Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and others. And I think it's just really...
And Kevin McCarthy, a Republican who's been a very close ally, all of whom said yes.
Yeah, and
I accepted that invitation.
Clearly making a statement right out of the gate that we are in this together, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah.
Peter, this is going to be one of the storylines that we follow in the new administration. Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden, is somebody who is a creature of Washington, spent decades in the Senate, is someone who's been a believer in making deals, working across party lines, often talks about your political rivals not being your mortal enemies. Will he find common cause with Republicans, or is that a bygone era? That seems to me to be one of the incoming storylines, but also one of the tensions.
Yeah, Savannah, I think you're exactly right. Fundamentally, that really is one of the challenges that President-elect Biden will face when he is sworn in, taking the oath of office in just a matter of hours today. I'm struck by this moment, the incoming First Lady, the incoming President, Joe Biden, waiting respectfully for President Trump to finish his remarks before physically entering the screen. And we have a dramatic split screen here outside the White House where just moments ago, we saw Marine One rise above the residence, and just literally a football field away from there, you could see the Bidens then a short time ago departing as well. You talk about those themes of unity, and he's trying to reinforce those themes, President-elect Biden is, not just in the inaugural address he'll deliver today, where his advisors and aides say it's not going to be about Donald Trump, it's not going to be about Joe Biden, it's going to be about the American people. And those close to Joe Biden tell me that he, in effect, is the perfect president for this moment, a man who, through the course of his life, has experienced so many personal traumas, the loss of one of his children and his wife so many years ago, the loss of his son Beau more recently, and now he is in a position to help America grieve and to heal in its own time of trauma with these competing crises. The pandemic, the worst in a century, the economic collapse as well, the challenges surrounding racial injustice, and so many other issues that Americans are dealing with right now. And Joe Biden has made clear that from this moment that he is sworn in as president, he is going to get to work. We will see him parade past the White House, not all the pomp and pageantry that you're used to, but much more focus on the policy today, with a press briefing even scheduled to take place, we believe, this evening here at the White House as they focus on some of those crucial issues, among them immigration, trying to roll back some of the policies of the Trump administration. Among those topics, immigration and, of course, resources toward COVID. Savannah and Hoda.
All right, Peter, let's dip back over to Joint Base Andrews, where we await Air Force One's departure, and Kelly O'Donnell is there with a piece of information about that inaugural tradition of the outgoing president leaving a note for the incoming president. What do you know, Kelly?
Yes, a White House official says that the president did leave a note for Joe Biden, his successor. This is one of the traditions that does bind one president to the next. And so for President Trump, who has broken most norms and discarded most traditions, this one is notable. I remember very vividly, you may as well, Savannah, that President Trump was very taken by the fact Barack Obama had left him a note, almost as if he didn't realize the tradition existed. A handwritten note left in the Resolute desk. President Trump showed that in his early days, talked about it in that first day or so, and so he has carried on that tradition to the 46th president.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. And let's kind of reset the stage here, and we can show you the various shots we have. But here is the Biden family who will be attending church this morning. That is a tradition all over this church, St. Matthew's, the Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle. It's not the typical church. Most presidents go to what's known as the Church of the Presidents, which is right across the street from the White House. This is our second Catholic president, JFK being the first. Joe Biden will be, when he is sworn in, the second Catholic, and he's attending Mass this morning. And as mentioned, Hoda, he has invited the Republican and Democrat leaders of the House and the Senate who have accepted that invitation.
So between this moment and the moment he gets sworn in, a lot is going to be happening, too. So he'll do the church service with this group, and then starts the procession toward the inauguration. Our Constitution calls for it to happen afternoon on January 20th, and here we are. So we're just a matter of 3 hours from now when then the transfer of power takes place. Let's bring Andrea Mitchell into this. Andrea, I mentioned this is something of a break with tradition in terms of the choice of churches. Why did President-elect Biden choose this church?
Well, he is deeply religious Catholic. It is such an important part of his life. He goes to Mass all of the time, daily Mass, as far as we can tell from pool movements, or almost daily Mass. And he's going to St. Matthew's. Interestingly, it is the church where JFK, the only other Catholic president, did not go on the inauguration day. He went to Holy Trinity, a short walk from his home in Georgetown at the time. But this is exactly where JFK's funeral was held. All of those pictures, it was on the steps of St. Matthew's that we remember little John in his short blue coat, saluting, all of those incredible images. Jackie Kennedy, of course, in the mantilla, Caroline. So that in the horse-drawn carriage, that is St. Matthew's. But St. John's, the Episcopal Church, is right across the street from Blair House, right across Lafayette Square, Jackson Square, actually, from Blair House, which is run by the State Department. That is the guest house, the official guest house, recently redecorated in the last couple of years. And that's where the Bidens did stay. When they lived, they, of course, lived in Wilmington, but he did have a house in Washington for years as well, when he was in the Senate, or an abode in Washington. But of course, they lived at the Naval Observatory for the 4 years of the Obama administration. But St. Matthew's is the church, the Catholic Church, where he has invited Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer. That's going to be the first bipartisan moment to signal the unity of his administration. But it is not right across the street from the White House, where we've seen the walk in the past. And that is going to be a notable difference. And you're going to see a lot of faith and religion in his life, because that has been his life all along.
And here we see it's a tale of two presidents, one incoming, one outgoing, in Air Force One with Donald Trump, Melania Trump, the Trump children aboard, headed to Mar-a-Lago, Florida, and taxiing now on the runway. We'll see it take off. We await Vice President Biden and his family and the congressional leaders who are going to attend church at St. Matthew's, this Catholic parish near the White House. And as mentioned, not the traditional Church of the Presidents, where most presidents on their inauguration days attend, but a devout Catholic. He's chosen this. And he spent the night at Blair House. They signed the guest book when they leave. And it's notable because he'll have signed his name, but this will be the last time he signs it without president before it.
Wow, that's interesting. And Peter Alexander, as they fly to Mar-a-Lago on Air Force One, Donald Trump is still technically president for the next several hours. So what does that even mean? So he's still able to conduct business from there if he wants to over the next few hours?
Well, that's exactly right. He still has the trappings of the presidency. Of course, aboard Air Force One, it loses that name, obviously, after his term expires right now. But for the course of the next several hours, until the oath of office is taken by Joe Biden today, President Trump remains the president. That's why they refer to this as a peaceful transfer of power, and why it's such a crucial process, obviously, when national security officials say that America is at its most vulnerable, why it's so critical that this communication, that this cooperation administration exists between the outgoing president and his administration and the incoming president and his administration as well. And as we prepare to watch President Trump take off for the last time aboard Air Force One, just a little bit more than 2 hours with press, as there would be, the travel pool, as we describe it, in the back of the plane with him in case he were to come back, and to greet the reporters that he sparred with, of course, on and off over the course of the last several years. But when he arrives there and when the time ticks away in his term, he does lose that massive megaphone, not having the bullhorn of Twitter. So, of course, yesterday, for me personally in the West Wing, saying goodbye to many of the White House aides. They lose their White House email. They lose the White House cell phones they shared. And so the question is sort of what he forms post-presidency. President Trump does from Mar-a-Lago as he maintains his position on the political stage. Obviously, so much power that he still wields within the Republican Party and within this country, given that more than 74 million Americans voted for him. Of course, more than 80 million voted for Joe Biden, which is why he won and why today he'll be sworn in. Biden, as we note on the left side of your screen, you see him arriving, having arrived at church today, a man of faith. And it's for that very reason that we saw Joe Biden yesterday with Hallelujah and Amazing Grace being sung at that beautiful ceremony that we were at yesterday at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. Wanted to make the pandemic front and center to provide Americans this moment of catharsis, this moment of healing, and really this shared moment of mourning for more than 400,000 Americans who have lost their lives. As on the right side of the screen, we watch Air Force One take off with President Trump aboard it for the last time.
We will watch as Air Force One takes off, and we now have a picture inside the church. And so one president leaves, another prepares to take the solemn oath of office. And we will continue to watch this. And this is a day now which will look more like inaugurations past, where you see the president-elect and the vice president-elect attend church, then the swearing in, an inaugural speech, a modified parade, Hoda, because of the pandemic and because of security concerns. They're not able to do what past presidents have done with that long walk and the procession and the parade. But here we have the two images. Church about to begin, a new day in Washington, and President Trump departing. And you can see some of the congressional leaders, if we bring that shot up, who've decided to accept the invitation from President-elect Biden to come and attend church with him this morning.
Yeah, it's notable when you think about the last few things that President Trump did before he hopped on this plane. And one, he did mention that he wished the next administration great success. And he also left a note, which are two things that I don't know if a lot of people expected at the end.
He did. We don't yet know what was written in that note. That's the kind of thing that does come to light eventually, sometimes right away, sometimes in years. But it is certainly one of the more graceful traditions changed hands for this series of events that will mark the transfer of power and the new administration. And it's worth noting that 2 weeks ago, almost at this very hour, that scene that we just saw was filled with people, and among them, insurrectionists who came in and broke into the Capitol. And that has changed everything, changed the climate in Washington.
Yeah, and it's changed the way that President Trump is leaving office. It was on the very risers that I'm standing on, Savannah, here at the west front of the Capitol, that you had those insurrectionists come up and basically take over both this side and the other side, the east front as well, breaking into the building, incited by President Trump, who was just down the mall from where we're standing, delivering a speech at what was billed then as a rally. Of course, those rioters ended up coming over to the Capitol, walking down the National Mall. It did change everything. It changed the way that many Republicans in particular saw the president's actions and viewed the president in his final days as office. You're struck as you look at some of these images, and you can see on the left side of our screen now that shot of the West Front where I'm standing. It looked so different 2 weeks ago, and it was so visceral for those who were here, members of Congress, lawmakers, Republican leaders, Democratic leaders for that matter, and it presented President Trump's biggest challenge by far of his presidency. It is directly what triggered that second impeachment. He is now the only president in history to have been impeached twice. And now, unlike the last impeachment, Savannah, there are real questions about whether he could actually be convicted. If he is, it is then possible, he could be barred from running for office again, which would obviously have serious implications for President Trump, given now several times just this morning he has alluded to coming back to Washington, being back on the field of political play, if you will. There is a sense here at the Capitol of resiliency that, yes, 2 weeks ago it looked so different. Rioters were basically taking over the building, but they prevailed that day. Members of Congress did, the vice president, in getting through that electoral college count. And the peaceful transfer of power prevails today now as this process, this democratic process that is so fundamental to our country, continues.
Hallie, thank you so much. We will be on the air all day. We're going to take a pause right now. Some of you will return to the Today Show. We will continue our coverage, the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. I'm Savannah Guthrie alongside Hoda Kotb, and we'll see you in a few moments.
Good morning. Our coverage, of course, continuing. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. This is a special edition of Morning News Now. It is the dawn of a